I'm Travis Wayne Goodsell, and this video is going to be educational. I am Mormon of 50 years, born and raised, and it's understood that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints requires payment from its members. And so I'm going to go over the various financial crimes committed by the church to all Mormons. And I'll do this in a segment video so that I can have breakfast in between. A protection racket is utilized by the mafia and crime organizations generally to shake down typically small businesses within their area to receive extra money for their services. And they typically have a legitimate business which poses as a front to conduct their backroom extortion threats to the companies. And so, for example, your typical mafia front business is sanitation, so that they can justify sending people to the stores so that on all outward appearances it looks like it's just that time of the month when the rent is due. But the goons shake them down for extra money each month. And so with tithing, it's similar in that they shake down Mormons with every paycheck. Tithing is supposed to be 10% of your income. And if you work for the church, for example, they offer you the option of allowing them to deduct tithing from your check. The thing is that in and of itself, it would be fine. The church could get away with it because, it's a church. They require money to run and operate the business. And if you choose to be a member, that's your deal. The problem comes from allowing 8-year-old children to be baptized in the church and become a member, and to order them to start paying tithing. So babysitting money, mowing lawns, lemonade stands, all are supposed to be tithed of children. And so that's a problem involving child labor laws. But also, when Mormons, when we go in for our temple recommend interview, we are asked, do you pay a full tithe? If we answer no, we don't get a temple recommend. If we're a partial payment, we don't get a temple recommend. We need to be full tithe payers in order to participate in the religion. That's the racket. And if the church had not done those two things, require children and extort the religious ritual worship, everything would be fine. But they don't, and thus it's a serious crime, white-collar criminal crime under the RICO Act. Another thing that has developed in Utah is that people do not rise up in priesthood authority without being full tithe payers as well. You get held back if you are not a full tithe payer, and you don't get the privileges of leadership. And so those are criminal organization tactics employed by the church in regards to tithing. In the crime world, blood oath loyalties usually involve a test of loyalty for new recruits so that they can prove themselves to the organization. And this involves the committing of crime, which could escalate depending on the level of devotion required to murder. In the local gangs, for example, new recruits are given a test that's performed with tagging, graffiti. And so there's no requirement for going out and killing somebody at that beginning stage. But as people move up the chain, eventually they need to be proven loyal, even if necessary, to committing murder. And obviously these have to be done in secret because you don't want to make those public. Before 1991, in the temples, I myself went to the Los Angeles temple in 1989, and they had the penalties, the penalty oaths, if we violated the covenants. Now, the two particular covenants that deal with this blood oath loyalty are the law of sacrifice and the law of consecration, both of which we as Mormons are required to sacrifice our very lives, if necessary, to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for the building up of the kingdom of God on the earth and for the establishment of Zion. And we raise our right arm to the square and we say yes. And then the penalty part involved the right arm with the thumb extended. The thumb extended is the indicator that this is the knife, because in the penalties we drew the knife to our necks and we went across as the penalty of death if we violated our covenants, specifically of sacrifice. If we did not sacrifice our very lives, if necessary, for the church, we have to kill ourselves. If we do not follow the law of consecration and give everything to the church, we have to kill ourselves. That's the blood oath loyalty in the temples. And this is part of the financial crime, is that we have to give of our money to the church. Everything that we spend it for must be towards building up the church, the kingdom, Zion, all considered the same. And if we don't, we're supposed to kill ourselves. And yes, the rumors are true. Brigham Young would actually implement the murders of the unfaithful, and it carried on for several successive prophet leaders, if you want to call them prophets. And so this mindset still exists in Utah Mormon culture to this day. They just don't talk about it. They keep it a secret. Mormons typically call tithing fire insurance. The actual fire insurance of the church was changed by Lorenzo Snow when he did that Windows of Heaven speech in St. George, requiring tithing as protection money. The actual fire insurance for the church is fast offerings. Now, there is no forced obligation like tithing to pay fast offerings or other offerings to the church, other donations. But insurance companies are gambling institutions. Gambling, for example, is you go in, you're supposed to have money, you put your money on the table or in the slot machines or wherever, and you risk losing it. And it's all rigged, if you didn't know. Even though they claim to be the loosest slots in whatever town. It's designed to addict you, and it's not really an addiction because you can pull away. It's just that you get caught up in thinking that you can win, that you can beat the system, or figure out the secret combination to winning your hand or the slot machines or whatever. That's where they trick you and they get you sucked in. But gambling, as defined, is investing with no guarantee of a return on your investment. And so if you treat it like an entertainment, fine. Go in with $20 and say that I'm going to play around for 1 hour, and if I lose the $20, that's it, I'm done. If you then start hawking your possessions and your family members, then there's problems. But with fast offerings, the money in the church is what goes towards helping the poor and the needy. Even though Malachi says that tithing is supposed to go for helping the poor and the needy, that are supposed to go in the storehouses, Mormons, because of Lorenzo Snow, have switched it, and now fast offerings go towards helping the poor and the needy. And during the Great Depression, Welfare Square was created to assist Mormons who were unemployed during that financial crisis and food and job insecurity. And the church has continued with it, but instead of creating storehouses across the land, across the world, to prepare for a rainy day, as they claim that they're doing with their investment money, the church instead just has it as token. They have the storehouses, the majority of them are here in Utah, and Mormons have to request from their bishop assistance. It's designed to be temporary. It's not designed for permanent, even though they're supposed to give to those who are permanently disabled, the elderly, etc. But the church, for some reason, I refuse to give permanently to people. They don't want to create a welfare reliance. They want Mormons to be self-reliant. They even published a manual about self-reliance. They always guilt trip Mormons that if you are not self-reliant, that if you're not taking care of your family, and if you're not taking care of your family as the husband and the presider in the home, you are a sinner. And that has caused many marital problems in the Mormon Church. As our economy under Reagan, with the trickle down to the corporate leaders and nowhere else below, has resulted in a collapsing economy, the gap between the rich and the poor has been widening. And now that we're in the coronavirus crisis, we've had an economic crash with unemployment numbers far beyond the Great Depression. And yet the church is closed. They're refusing to hand over their food and toilet paper during this crisis, when the Mormons should be rushing their bishops, saying, I need help. I've been fired. I need help. And Nelson is holding his coronavirus fast today, which means that Mormons are required to hand over money for the fast offering. And as I indicated, it's like insurance, because Mormons there is a law of the fast, but it's not enforced. If you're not asked the question in your temple recommend interview, like tithing, and so you don't have to pay fast in order to attend the temple, but if you think that by giving your money to the church, that the church will then help you in your time of need, think again. Because you'll be asked by your bishop, have you gone to your family first? That is a violation of the Doctrine and Covenants, where children have claim on their parents first. Children, underage adults, they have claim on their parents. They don't have claim on their grandparents. They don't have claim on their uncles or older than 18 siblings. Just parents. If the parents are deceased or poor, then the children have claim on the church. That's not the practice. Bishops ask you to go to your extended family, even if you're an adult. And that's wrong, because the poor are the adults. The poor are supposed to have claim on the church during times of poverty. And so, again, the church is acting like an insurance company, a gambling institution, where we give in fast offerings with no guarantee of a return on our investment when we need it. And during this coronavirus is a perfect example of Mormons not receiving assistance during this time, as they're being turned away from the storehouses that were supposed to be used for this rainy day. A pyramid scheme is often a single individual as a CEO of a front for a business. Sometimes it's a group of people, but the pyramid scheme functions in a way in which they tell two people, and they tell two people, and they tell two people, and so on, and so on. They recruit salespersons. That's the recruiting that is done. And the salespeople do not get paid for being a salesperson. They only get a portion of the sales that they get. And so there's often kits that are given to these salespersons to go out and recruit others to not just buy the merchandise, which are exceedingly high priced, and it's specifically done that way, but the other way that recruitment is done is by getting people to become salespersons themselves, to buy the kit, to go out and recruit others. And so there is nothing really being bought, though they have the front of an actual business with products that could be purchased. But the salespeople recruit other salespeople to buy the kit in order to be a salesperson in the so-called company. No, that's a pyramid scheme. Eventually, if you look at it in terms of numbers, the business ends when the whole world is recruited, and no more money can come in, because that's it. Everybody's been recruited. So the last people to be recruited are the ones who don't get money, because there's nobody for them to recruit. And typically in these recruiting pyramid schemes, the money that you do get is not very much. Even though they advertise you can make millions by sitting on your couch and be a telemarketer. So these are criminal organizations, and there are many of them that exist here in Utah, because the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints also is running a pyramid scheme as well. And so the legislatures who are Mormon have to allow all pyramid schemes if they're going to allow the church. So the way in which it works for the church is, you probably already guessed, the missionary program. They recruit. And if they didn't require the payment by Mormons, again, they would have been fine. If they stayed away from requiring tithing in order to go to the temples, etc., they could have gotten away with this as a regular missionary force, where Mormons volunteer their time to be missionaries rather than having to be approved to be a missionary. And so the way it works is, when we turn of age, for me it was 19 years. Now under Monson it was lowered to 18 years for men, and women have been lowered to 19 from 21. And we have to pay for the recruitment kit that we sell the church to other people with. And the kit has been provided by Mr. Mack here in Utah. As the majority of missionaries talk about how they went to Mr. Mack to get their missionary recruitment kit, which involved clothing in that particular case. But then you also have to get the manuals and instruction lessons to teach to others, and you have to pay for that. And the church does, they're fairly cheap, so it's not overly blown as your typical recruitment kits in regular pyramid schemes, but except for Mr. Mack. The suits are expensive, but they require the expensive clothing for the mission. And that caused problems for me in New York, as people thought I was rich. And I was, because of my parents. Dad working 6 days a week, 16 hours a day. Most of that was commuting into Los Angeles. But that's what we do. The church does not pay everything for us to go. We do not have our tithing used for that purpose. We don't have the missionary fund for that purpose, though people can donate to a specific missionary now. There's a special process to do that, but that's what it is. We buy a kit in order to go on our missions, to recruit others, to then join the church, begin paying to the church, and then likewise one day go out and recruit themselves. And the idea is that what happens when the whole world's converted, well, the missionary program will just stop. They'll make it a ministry program, as Nelson changed it to. But there won't be any more kits purchased because everybody will now be paying tithing and fast offerings. So that's the recruitment pyramid scheme. The majority of you know that the use of Mormon underwear is exclusive to the church, and it's just because of the marks, the square and the compass of Freemasonry on our breasts, and the navel and the knee mark. That's mostly for the recruitment kit. That once you turn 19 or 18 now, to go on to your missions, you have to go through the temple and thus be a full tithe payer. But then you're also required to purchase for the rest of your life the exclusive Mormon underwear. And so that is part of the recruitment kit. The other types of merchandise are not your typical merchandise, just because of the uniqueness of the church organization. Because, for example, the NFL has an NFL shop. That's exclusive merchandise for NFL, even though they sell typical items, but the logos and such are unique to that company. And so that's not what I'm referring to with exclusive merchandise with the LDS Church. With the LDS Church, they had a problem with people purchasing other Bibles. And so in 79, the church produced their version of the Bible with exclusive footnoting, topical guide, Bible dictionary, and then I was a part of the program that revised them to transfer it to Guide to the Scriptures for foreign language editions. This is more typical, and it would be fine, except that the church refuses to provide Mormons with a correct translation of the Bible. They claim that they are led by prophets who are inspired by God, who have the priesthood key of translation, though they don't talk about it in conference, do they, when Mormons give loyalty oaths. But scriptures are an exclusive merchandise that is fraudulent, because they purposely continue with the worst translated version of the Bible, and despite their own doctrine in Article of Faith number 8, that the Bible needs to be retranslated and corrected, having the missing portions put back in, the plain and precious things talked about in the Book of Mormon, and even the 79 version took out the Apocrypha from the King James Version that Joseph Smith used. Joseph Smith had a King James Version with the Apocrypha. And so despite claiming that Joseph Smith used the King James Version, so we're using the King James Version, well, we're not using Joseph's King James Version because we don't have the Apocrypha. And it's kind of sad because my favorite story in the Apocrypha is actually my favorite biblical story, and that's of Bel, an extra chapter in the book of Daniel. So if you ever get a chance to read that, it's awesome. But part of the exclusive merchandise deal you make with the church is that you are forbidden from pursuing a research and study of the Apocrypha. That's where the crime comes in, is that only church-approved merchandise, scriptures, materials, manuals, are ordered upon Mormons. And so you can't go studying ancient languages, you can't decipher Paleo-Hebrew, you can't decipher Egyptian petroglyphs, and you definitely can't discover that the Bible can be retranslated and corrected with the missing portions put back in from the Egyptian writings and petroglyphs. I found that out the hard way. And so that's part of the exclusive merchandise. They could make a killing off of merchandise, but they only provide pictures of the heads of the prophets. They don't allow action figures, especially those of biblical characters. There was a group trying to do it with Book of Mormon characters, but they couldn't. They held back of doing the Antichrists and laymen and those bad characters. And so children are not able to reenact the Book of Mormon stories as a result. They can only play with these toys, it's Nephi or Samuel the Lamanite, and they don't even, I don't think they even get Jesus. I think that's why they ended up having to shut down, but I mean, come on, guys. But yeah, the church doesn't like it when famous Mormons and church leaders sign autographs, and so they forbid the signing of autographs, and Mormons are required to remain silent. If they approve of somebody, they can stand. And so there's lots of problems, but that's how the exclusive merchandise works, is where you purposely provide inferior, defective, antiquated, poor quality, whatever, products, and force them to be exclusive. So there you go. That's the financial crimes in Mormonism, and we all understand it as Mormons. It's become a part of our culture, so we don't say, wait a minute, no, this is wrong. And that's part of the con, is that the prophets claim to be true prophets who are in direct communication with God, and so when this coronavirus strikes, or when they get exposed for the 100 billion scandal, They all talk about, as a church we're concerned, we are praying, we're fasting, and Mormons just go, oh, okay. But if you pay attention and you realize what they're doing, they are not taking care of us during this rainy day. Like the Great Depression, there's a great need right now, not just among Mormons, but throughout the world, and especially now the United States, as we have risen to be the worst in the world. It originated in China, and yet America is the worst in the world? China's got it under control, so they say. But we're the worst in the world? How did that happen? And so where's the church? Where are the opening of the storehouses like Joseph of Egypt? That's the whole point and purpose of Pharaoh's dream, is that Joseph goes, oh, okay, you had a dream in which we're going to have 7 prosperous years, and then following those 7 prosperous years, we're going to have 7 years of famine. So I recommend to Pharaoh that during these prosperous years, we put the surplus in storage, so that when a rainy day comes, the famine, the food insecurity, coronavirus that fires people and isolates them at home without paychecks, without money to buy food, as people are maxing out credit cards, as people are no longer getting checks, as people are no longer getting direct deposits, there is a great need to open up the storehouses, but the church is not prepared. They didn't have enough storehouses, and they weren't building a supply for the rainy day. They did it of money, but not of food. And that's the financial crime, biggest of all right now. And so Mormons, they want to be left alone. They don't want people pointing out the crimes and the natural behavior, the weaknesses of the flesh, as they want to call it, instead of a crime. And yet, when Mormons go out to recruit, they are asking people to say, just trust us, just pay us, and everything will be fine. Don't fact check us. Don't audit us. Don't research us. And Mormons can't get both worlds. If we're going to go out and require people to join our church, we have to allow those people access to everything about our church. The finances, the way we spend our money, and how we run the organization. Not just the theology, not just the rituals, not just the scriptures we choose to use and not use. And so Mormons can't have their cake and eat it too. And so the lesson for Mormons is simple. Don't commit crime. If the church is committing a crime, it's not God's church. And so if you want others to leave you alone, don't steal from them. That's why people come after others, is because they feel they've been wronged. That's why I'm suing the church, because I was wronged. It wasn't because I wasn't given a priesthood leadership position. It was because of the crimes committed against me. Like I said, I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew. I deciphered Egyptian petroglyphs. I discovered that the Bible came from the Egyptian petroglyphs. Except for the Book of Esther. That came from Mesopotamian records. But they blacklisted me. I was one of their own, faithful. That's why I pursued ancient languages, because that's our church. We have it in the Book of Abraham. The Book of Mormon talks all about it, Egyptian and Paleo-Hebrew, and yet blacklisted. And when I filed a lawsuit against the church turned around with the government's help and had me disappeared like a criminal organization. And so the coronavirus is preventing the lawsuit to finish, because the church can't respond. This coronavirus saved their hide. But, yeah. There you go.